Yo, what's up YouTube? In today's video, I'm giving you guys my final top 5 loadouts you guys need to be using in Warzone. So if you enjoy this video, be sure to give it a like for the algorithm, subscribe, notifications turned on, and let's get into it. All right, so let's hop in here. And of course, our first gun is going to be the D tier 30. And what I said by like my final top 5 is that, of course, Black Ops 6 does come out, and I'll be covering a lot of Black Ops 6 content, but these are going to be the most hard meta ultimate weapons you guys can use, even with a bit of a bonus. I'll give you guys 6 loadouts instead of 5 this time, since it'll be one of my last ones here on Warzone until the integration happens where they include all the Black Ops 6 weaponry. So let's get into it. First thing, muzzle category, we're gonna go throw on the quartermaster suppressor. This is still the best thing in the game. There's no reason for you guys to use a different suppressor, no matter on your ARs, SMGs, LMGs. It doesn't matter. You guys should always be going for the quartermaster unless there is a specific instance like a sniper rifle where you'd maybe want to have a different one that increases your damage range, not helping with recoil control. That's obviously, that makes sense. But for all your fully automatic stuff, the quartermaster is the way to go. That's in the barrel section. This is a little bit up for debate, but something I've been using recently is, so I normally go for the Extend 10 long barrel, which is really good. You know, obviously that gives you the best bullet velocity, minimum, like your effective damage range, your minimum, and your bullet velocity. It helps you out the most, but what I've been using here the most recently is the Sanctum 60 long barrel, because this almost does exactly the same thing. You don't really notice a damage drop off, and in fact, you might notice a faster TTK just because this helps the recoil control as opposed to the Extend 10. It does nothing for your recoil. So this will move more using the Extend 10 versus the Sanctum. The Sanctum, in my opinion, is going to be the better barrel to use. This just feels incredible, and it makes this gun literally a laser beam. So if you want to know how people have zero recoil on this thing, or almost virtually none, it's the Sanctum barrel. So let's throw that on there. After that, skip the under barrel and the ammunition. We're gonna go down here and of course throw on the 40 round mag. This is what it is. This is nothing new, nothing old. You can throw on the 40 round mag and be perfectly good to go. After that, in the optics section, we're gonna go throw on one of 2 optics. First being the Jack Glassless. This is gonna be my preference since I play primarily Rebirth, and I don't feel like I always need a long optic, but you can use the Jack Glassless. Or you can scroll on down here just a little bit longer, which is gonna, since there's like 1.5 billion optics and there's only about 3 or 4 of them that are really useful, you guys can go ahead and use the Choreo Eclat 2.5x, just because this gun has such low visual recoil, especially with that barrel. This is gonna be perfect for using a nice optic because it's just not gonna move a whole lot, and you're gonna get some great longer distance shots off just by having this thing on there. So the Choreo or the Jack Glassless, totally up to you. Personal preference or what your like playstyle is, but I'd go for this. After that stock section, I'd go for the last one. Well, the last attachment in here is the Rifleman 200. Go ahead and throw this bad boy on there. It makes all the difference in the world. It's going to really stabilize your gun out and make it so that, I mean, you're really not going to be missing no shots unless your accuracy is just bad, in which case that is going to be a user error skill issue and you need to have maybe some better thumbs. So this will make it very, very simple to hit all of your shots. We put this setup together. This is going to be the most hard meta best setup for the D tier. Next up, to pair with your D tier, having the most hard meta SMG would be great. That's kind of like your most sweaty possible loadout is actually having that. So we're gonna give you guys the best possible setup here for the static HV. So first thing in the muzzle category is of course going to be the quartermaster suppressor. This is just absolutely fantastic, and I'd highly recommend for you guys to go ahead and have the quartermaster on here. It just makes such a big difference having that on there. Barrel section, we're gonna go throw on the Auger 840 light barrel. So this right here is just a wonderful barrel. It makes this gun very fast. It's really not going to mess your recoil all that much. Of course, you're going to have a little bit of recoil, but highly recommend you guys run the Auger 840 light and just kind of be, you know, just keep it at that. I mean, this is going to be the best possible way to run this gun. After that, under barrel section, this is where it gets a little bit to personal preference. My preference is the Jack Slash, and the reason being is that it helps a lot with the vertical recoil, which the static does have that tendency to kind of pull up, not as much side to side, just basically up. So you guys can go ahead and really mitigate that and gain some movement speed and sprint speed by having the Jack Slash on there. Personally, I think this is the all-around best underbarrel attachment to run on this thing, but if you want to switch it up, I'd recommend either the XRK Edge, the DR6 hand stop, or something like the paracord grip. Those are basically going to be your 4 options that I really recommend. So go ahead and choose between one of those. For me personally, it's going to be the Jack Slash. After that optic section, a couple options in here as well. That's going to be the Jack Glassless, which is going to be the first one. This is just so easy to use, of course, because it helps your firing aiming stability, basically meaning your visual recoil is going to be a lot less when you're using this as opposed to maybe some other types of red dots out there. I like using this. This is really good. Also, what I like really using is the slate reflector. This has kind of been my more new thing to run. I switched up my optic on the static, switched up my barrel on the D tier, and it's like I'm feeling like this is kind of a bit of a magical setup. So I really enjoy running the slate reflector, but it really does not matter. As long as you got a red dot that is easy for you personally to use, That is what matters. But I think for the majority of people, it's going to be the Jack Glassless, Slate Reflector, and a little bit farther down here, which is going to be the Nightmare Model 2023. This will be ultimately the best thing for everyone to choose from. So those three are going to be your well-rounded, good optics to use on the static. So just choose one that you really want. After that stock section, we're throwing the Spry 34 light stock. This is the best stock in here. No reason to go ahead and run any of these other ones. I've tried using them and they do stabilize your gun out, but realistically speaking, if you want to be truly effective at close range, you should be more mobile, and the static will help you by doing that with the Spry 34 light. So go ahead and do that as opposed to running like the no stock. I believe you actually move faster, if I'm not mistaken. You have 5.6 meters versus 5.7 and 6.3 in your sprint speed versus 6.4. So you technically get a faster sprint speed running the Spry ever so slightly as opposed to the no stock. Kind of wild, but that's why this thing is so good. And it also doesn't mess your recoil nearly as much as the no stock. So this is the ultimate setup. Definitely try this one out. It's really good. Next up, let's give you guys a great AR, which is going to be the STG-44. Yes, this got nerfed a little while ago. It's not really as viable on big map, but on Resurgence, it's still perfectly fine. You guys can have a great time using this. Of course, I mean, at some super long ranges, that D tier might outgun you, but for a majority of the time, the STG is going to be perfectly fine. So the Quartermaster, of course, is our first attachment to throw on this thing. Now let's get into the barrels. So this is where it comes down to kind of like the D tier, where there's a couple barrels to choose from and you can't go too wrong. So first one being the Bronacrux Heavy. This is going to be really solid for your overall, of course, your bullet velocity, damage range, all this sort of fun jazz. It's not really going to do a whole lot for your recoil control. I mean, it's funny, it says 3 pros here. Doesn't say anything about recoil control, but it shows recoil control in this tab. So that's fun. Anyways, so we have that as our first one. We have the Heinrichter C70. This is basically going to make it so this has the farthest possible damage range, best bullet velocity, all the above. And then we have the Fengor 792 long barrel, which does your bullet velocity and range, aim metal sway. Also doesn't say anything about recoil control, but it does give you recoil control. So you have 6, 9, and 9% versus the Crux Heavy, which has 5, 9, and 9%. So these are all pretty similar. If you're comfortable with controlling the STG, I'd recommend to go for the Heinrichter C70, as this is the farthest possible range. If you need a little bit of recoil control help, I'd probably just go for the Bronacrux Heavy and not incur some of the other mobility penalties you'll get for the Fengor 792. You do get mobility penalties by running this thing. So between the Bronacrux Heavy and the Heinrichter, whatever you're more comfortable with, basically go with that, because it's pretty negligible. 35 meters, 36, it's got like 66.1 versus 64.3 in your bullet velocity, 1081 versus 1165. So it's not that big of a difference. Just kind of, I mean, if you feel like you're going to be more accurate with the slower barrel, go for that. It's not going to make a difference. You don't want to miss shots by having the barrel that has less recoil control on it. After that, magazine, of course, 50 rounds. It is what it is. You just got to go throw on the 50. 40 is not really acceptable as your primary long range option. Considering, I mean, basically the playlist right now is quads. So you're definitely going to need 50 rounds. Just go for 50. And optic section, this is where I pretty much exclusively recommend the Jack Glassless. Maybe if you want to run the Bronacrux Heavy barrel, something that helps your recoil, you could go throw on like something like the Corio Eagle Eye 2.5x, and that'd be a great option. But largely speaking, you should just go for the Jack Glassless and call it a day right there. Lastly, stock section, we're going to go throw on the DR79 combo stock, as this is the best stock in here possible. Gives you the most amount of recoil control benefits at a nice 21, 11, and 11%. This is wonderful, and this is what I would recommend. So that is going to be my full hard meta best STG build. Next up, to kind of pair with the STG or the D tier that we talked about, the FJX Horus. This actually has one of the fastest TTKs at close range, primarily because it has such a fast fire in comparison to a lot of the other SMGs. It is incredible, and really not that many people are using it, even though it is pretty much statistically the #2 SMG in the game. So first thing is going to, of course, be the Quartermaster. If you guys are trying to throw on anything else in here, you can see the attachments are locked. That is because you need to have on a barrel in order to throw on the other attachments. For whatever reason, the Quartermaster and the ECS required suppressor kind of bypasses that. It looks a little bit funny there with having that camo go on, of course, the end of the suppressor, but the Quartermaster is what you guys should be running on this thing specifically. I would not recommend anything else. Barrel section, what we're going to do is we're going to extend out the range. You can see if we go over here, the effective damage range is only 8.6 meters, which is pretty bad in the grand scheme of things when you look at the base number. But because the fire rate is 983 rounds per minute, you tend to get a lot more shots off, and it tends to be more forgiving considering the magazine size is pretty good as well, that you can miss a couple shots and still have a great TTK, as opposed to something like the WSP9, which has a significantly slower fire rate. So if you start missing those shots, your TTK goes up drastically. So that's kind of more of a skill weapon versus this is a lot more forgiving for people that aren't as accurate. So what I'd recommend is go for the Sin 9 long barrel to just increase out 15% across the board and 20% on your bullet velocity. Don't worry about these other penalties here. It's really not that big of a deal. Just go for the Sin 9 long barrel. After that, we have two options. So I'll skip this for right now. We'll just go down to the magazine. I'll show you guys this pretty interesting little stat here. You can see this. Basically, if you go for the 48 round mag, you can go to the 60. You can see like it's basically the same cons and everything like that. The difference here is you can see the mobility. We go over the detailed statistics. If you guys do this for yourselves, there's no difference between the 48 and the 60 round mag at all. No extra cons. You're not slowed down anymore. So there's no real inherent reason, unless you're one of those YY kids that wants to run the smaller magazine for the look of the gun, that you should be running the smaller mag instead of the 60. Go for the 60, have one of the largest magazine sizes for an SMG, and you'll thank yourself later because it's pretty nice. So I'd go for that. Lastly, before we get into our kind of debatable attachment here, when we get into the stock section, you're going to throw in the Ripper Light. So this is really good right here. I'd recommend if you guys go for the Ripper Light. The no stock gives you a little too much recoil, and that's for someone like me that's got like over a 5 KD. You know, I just think that when you're trying to use the iron sights on this thing, when you have the no stock on there, if you don't build it out correctly, you're gonna get a little bit too much of that visual, so it's gonna suck. So for the majority of people, the Ripper Light is the way to go. Even personally, if I'm running this as like a hard meta SMG build, not like a movement build, I'm gonna run this with the Ripper Light. Now for our last attachment, which is up in the air, we have two things we can do: underbarrel or ammunition. So if you're gonna go for the ammunition, you're gonna throw in the 9mm high grains, and this is gonna of course extend out your range and everything like that, which is really good. Keep in mind you're gonna have a little bit more visual recoil, a little bit extra recoil. So take this build into the firing range with the high grains on this exact build, see what you think. So throw the high grains on there. If you don't like that, my other recommendation, you go down here to throw in the Jack Slash. This is really solid, increase your movement speed. This would be actually my preferred way to kind of run the gun. I just really enjoy how it feels with the Jack Slash, but I'm not opposed to using the high grains either. So just check it out for yourself, see what you really want to use. But for me, this is gonna be my preferred build, and you guys can absolutely fry with this thing. All right, now going in order, giving you guys another top meta AR, that's gonna be the Holger 5.56. This has one of the most absurd damage ranges in the game, but not many people are actually using it, even though it's pretty much statistically got the farthest range out there. So you guys should be using this. I'll give you a couple builds here for it. So first thing in the muzzle category, of course, Quartermaster. We're just going to throw this on there, not think about it too much. Barrel section, we are going to extend this out to the farthest possible range, which is the Cryos 6 match barrel. So even, let's take a look at this here. By default, it already has a 50 meter damage range, which if you looked at the STG, has a 36. The D tier has about a 25, but I mean, the D tier is just so overpowered and it doesn't really have a damage drop off that it's pretty ridiculous, and it's got no recoil. So you can down people really quickly. But this right here with this barrel has a 61 meter effective damage range, a 73.2 minimum, but your bullet velocity is the one downside to this thing. Apart from a little bit of that recoil, it's not nearly as fast as we want it to be. So we'll fix that here with this build, but this is pretty ridiculous how it has such a far damage range. After that, we're gonna go down here to the magazine side of things. We're throwing, of course, the 40 round mag. This is really solid, and I'd recommend for you guys to go ahead and do this. I mean, this is the one of the, I guess, the other downside, like the recoil and stuff like that, bullet velocity. And the magazine is not like, you know, a make or break, but it only has a 588 round per minute fire rate. That means it's actually a little bit more forgiving to have 40 rounds in the mag as opposed to something like, you know, 30 or 50 or something like that. I mean, you can get away with having 40. It's perfectly fine. And then lastly, we're gonna go into the optic section before I show you guys kind of the different attachments you can switch out for this thing. Jack glasses. This would be truly one of those guns like the STG where I'm like, you don't want to throw on a bigger optic on there because it still has that visual recoil, and I'll show you ways where you can kind of mitigate that as much as you can. But overall, the Jack glasses is the move on this thing, so I would recommend for you guys to stick with that no matter what you're playing. Resurgence, big map if you play big map, but just go for that. So this is where we can kind of mess around with a few different things. So if you guys want more recoil control, you're fine with the bullet velocity, go into the stock section and throw in the RB Adel Assault stock. This is really good for a 14 to 14% increase. We don't need to go for something like the Bruin Heavy Support Grip because that's going to increase your vertical, and what this gun has a lot of is vertical recoil. So we're trying to lower that as much as we can. This is going to be your best bet at making this thing feel very low recoil, but you're still not fixing your bullet velocity issue. So we're gonna go down here to the ammunition side of things. And you can throw on high grains. I will say this. You can throw on high grains for a nice 15% increase across the board, though it's not really necessary to increase your effective damage range. So a nice little workaround around this is to go all the way down here, go to the end, to the 5.56 high velocity round. So you technically lose 5% of your effective and minimum, but it's still farther out than basically anything in the game, so it really doesn't matter. But you get a 20% increase on your bullet velocity, pushing you out to almost 1,000 meters, meaning that you're really competitive now, and you don't get the added recoil of the high grains. So that's a nice little workaround, and I recommend for you guys to go ahead and try this. So between the high velocity, take those off, throw on a stock, or I'll even show you guys this one. You can even take off your jack glasses if you want to use the iron sights and throw on the stock and run it like an iron sight build. You can run this a few different ways, and it's really good for everything. And so for our extra build here today, for our 6th build of this top 5, I want to throw in the, it's like an honorary mention, but I just want to throw in an extra build here since it's gonna be my last one for Warzone until, of course, the Warzone integration. This right here, the Superior 46 or the Superior 46, whatever you want to call it, is basically the fastest SMG in the game. So we give you a build for the static, give you for the FJX. This is going to be next in line here for having basically, you know, the number 3 slot or number 2, depending on how you look at it. So muzzle, of course, quartermaster suppressor, and there is a few ways to run this, which I'll show you guys that too. Barrel section, I'd actually recommend guys to go for the bore 99 short barrel. I have seen a lot of people recommend to not run a barrel on here, but my whole philosophy behind running this gun is that, well, it's got the fastest movement speed in the whole game. So if I'm trying to really use this gun to its benefit and like use it to its strengths, which is the movement, you want to run the bore 99 because you're going to increase this, and your sprint speed and your tack sprint speed and all this sort of fun jazz is going to be so ridiculous that you can break people's camera angles without really even trying. So I really suggest for you guys to go for this. After that, we're going to go down to the underbarrel section, and a couple options in here being the jack slash. That is great if you guys want to control any vertical, which it really doesn't have hardly any, so you don't have to worry about that. But your movement speed is an increase, of course, your sprint speed, and that's really that. If you guys want to have a little bit more of that strafe ability, I'd recommend the XRK Edge or the DR6. Something to keep in mind is that the ADS movement on the XRK Edge is 9% versus the DR6 is 6%, meaning that you can sometimes feel like you have a little bit too much that ADS movement speed back and forth when you kind of build this out entirely when you have the XRK Edge on there. And sometimes when you have too much that strafe speed, your iron sights start kind of bouncing around. You guys will know what I'm talking about if you ever had a really high strafe speed build. But I mean, this is really good either way. So XRK Edge, DR6, really would recommend basically any of these 3, jack slash, XRK, DR6, totally up to you. I'd probably go for the XRK Edge personally. After that, magazine section, of course, around the 40 round mag, that's kind of what it is. And then for our last attachment, stock section, we go throw on the Rescue 9 stock, which gives you the fastest sprint speed in the whole game. So movement speed, if I take a look at the no stock, which you probably think would be faster, your movement speed is only 5.8 with a 5% increase, and your sprint speed is a 6.4 with a 3% increase versus the Rescue 9, which has an 11% increase on your movement speed, making you 6.1 meters a second, and then your sprint speed of a 6% increase, making you plus 6%. So really good to have the Rescue 9 stock on there. Also no recoil cons on it either, which is really fantastic. Actually helps out your recoil, which is pretty cool. I was about to say cool and crucial at the same time. So I guess I kind of fumbled on that one, but that is going to be the best build right there. Also, if you guys want to extend out your range, you can take off the XRK Edge, go down here and throw on your high grain rounds and basically get an extra few meters of damage range that you would have lost by adding on the bore 99, and you'll still feel incredibly fast, just a little bit less so. I would personally go for the underbarrel as opposed to this, but if you feel like you need some more damage range, maybe your ping is a little bit higher, you feel like you need your shots to hit a bit harder, go for the high grains, you'll be perfectly good to go. So that's been my top 5, top 6. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like for the algorithm, subscribe, notifications turned on, check out this other video on screen. I hope to see you guys around on the channel for all the Black Ops 6 content.